Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today we're learning the 11th Perek of Yevamos. Today's shiur is Lila Nishmas. Um, Yuda Dov Ben Yisrael. Ruspas Simcha Cohen, Aaron Nachman Ben Simcha Cohen, Yeshua Mordechai Ben Shepsel, Bracha Sab Shmalev, and Binan Moshe Ben Yosef, and they shall also have an aliyah. Before Shlema, for Yisrael, Baruch Aleh, Racha Bas Pesach Zelda, Avram Yitzchak Berisha, Chai Bas David Bela, for Shlema, So Shechal Yisrael. And as Shchus for Avram Yitzchak Ben Henna, and Aram Yeshua Ben Gittel, Sheif Rabracha Vatzlachet, all their endeavors, and obviously a special shout out to our friends at the Imperial Advisory Group. They specialize in CFO stuff for your businesses, CFO on demand. If you need help with that, please reach out to them at imperialgrp.com. Here we go. Perek Yud Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. As we discussed in the past, that when a man marries a woman, many of her relatives become usher to him. Now we're going to discuss a law, a halacha about a woman who had bia with a man outside of marriage. So noistin al hanus of al ha-mifata. One may marry the relatives of a woman who was violated or seduced by him. He is only usher to the relatives of his wife, not the relatives of a woman who is not his wife. This is obviously reflective of the din d'oraisa. However, the Chachamim put a safeguard around that, and they put gezerah on him being usher to usher to marry any of the relatives of the woman that he had bia with while she is alive. So that's they did that to not give him a free pass, basically. However, one who violates or seduces the relatives of a woman he married is chayiv to the onesh of the Isuri Ever. No, say Adam and says Aviv and Mefutas Aviv. A man may marry a woman who is violated by his father, or is seduced by his father. She is not ushered to him as his father's wife. And says, but no, Mefutas, but not. Similarly, he may marry a woman who was violated by his son, or who was seduced by his son, and she is not ushered to him as his daughter-in-law. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda Oser, the news is Aviv, Avifutas Aviv. Rabbi Yehuda asks it in the case of the woman of the case that a woman was violated by his father or seduced by his father. He says he does agree that he's permitted to marry the woman with whom his son had relations. So the machlokas between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yehuda is based on their interpretation of the pasuk in Devarim. Gimel, Devarim Gimel. That sounds like it's in Kisei. Gimel. No, that's not right. That's it. Am I crazy? That's not right. That's the wrong puzzle. Okay, wrong puzzle. Anyways, let's go on. The puzzle in English, which they have the wrong source for it over here, is a man shall not take the wife of his father, nor shall he uncover the robe of his father. That sounds like it's in Mishpatim, actually. Shmos 23, not in Devarim 23. Anyways, Rabbi Yehuda understands that the robe of his father to mean that a woman who is violated or seduced by his father. The Tana Kama interprets the verse in a different way, according to the Bartanur. Anyways, Mishnah Beis, Hagiyoresh in his Gairu Baneh Ima. In the case of a female convert whose sons converted to Yiddishkeit with her, and one of the sons married and died without children, Lo Chotziv Lo Yamin. The remaining sons do not perform Chalitza or Yibum with his widow, and she is free to remarry. Since they were born from non-Jewish parents, only afterwards converted, they are not considered brothers at all, because a ger is cut the noladami, that they're born again, and they have a new neshama, and therefore they're not related, api halacha, and the laws of Yibum and Chalitza do not apply. Aval harasha sharishon shalabek dusha v'ledasa b'dusha. Furthermore, afilu harasha sharishon furthermore, the halacha applies even if the first son's conception was not in kedusha, but his birth was in kedusha. I mean that the mother was Magayer after she got pregnant. Um, she was he was conceived before she became Jewish and gave birth after her conversion. While the second son's conception and birth were both in Kedusha, both when she was Jewish. In this case, even though both sons were born after the mother's conversion, they are not legally considered related to their father because the first son was conceived before his mother converted. Therefore, neither Yibum nor Chalitza is required. And so too is the law in the case of a non-Jewish shivcha kananis, whose sons were freed with her by their master, and one of the sons married and died without children, because they are not legally considered brothers. Neither Yibum nor Chalitza is required, and the widow is free to marry. Because remember, when a Ever Kanani or a Shich Kananis, they have children in captivity while they're servants, and then but when they come into the Avdus, they take on the status of like a woman. Yes, they do it. They're Jewish as in the level of a woman, not like a man. And then once they're freed, now they become full Jews. Um, and therefore, the children that they had are not they're biologically their children, but they're not. But halachically, they have a different status. So they do not require Yibum or Chalitza once they're freed. Mishnah Gimel, Chamesh Nashim Shenis Aviv Ladosei. 5 unrelated women each gave birth to a boy, and then their children became mixed up with one another, so that none of the mothers could identify the babies. Um, and in addition, each one of these women has another son from the same husband, whose identity is not in question. Um, I mean, the Meiri says that the Mishnah chose this number 5 simply as an example, but the same would apply to any number of women, not specifically 5. Hey, deal taruvos. In the course of time, mixed up children grew to adulthood, and they married, and then they died without children. Each widow now requires Yibum or Chalitza from her husband's brother. However, since we do not know which each son's parents are, it is impossible to match up the widow with her true brother-in-law, and so the solution is as follows: Arba chotzlin achas. The first for the Yevamos perform Chalitza with one of the widows. Echad Yevamos. And the remaining Yavam may then perform Yibum with her because she is permitted to marry him in any case. If she really is his brother's widow, he is now performing Yibum and all is well. And if she's not his brother's widow, then he may still marry her since she has definitely received Chalitza from whichever man was her Yavam. Next,
Leave the chop saw? Want me to leave the chop
What?
saw? Okay.
No?
Yeah, yeah.
You talking to me? There you go.
No, sorry.
Whoosh, chotzim lacheres. Next, he, the one who married the first widow, and three of the other Yevamos performed chalitza with another one of the widows, the Echem Yabim, and the remaining Yavam may then perform Yibum with her. This procedure is then repeated for the three widows that remain. Nimsu arba chalitzos, Yibum l'chol achas v'achas. It is therefore found that there are now four chalitzas and one Yibum being done with each and every widow. So, you can have the same, in actuality, you have the same four men can perform chalitza with each of the five widows, and then the remaining men can marry all five of them. The reason our mission does not suggest this is that it prefers an arrangement whereby each man may end up marrying, performing the mitzvah of Yibum, or one of the men to marry all the five widows. Then he alone would do the mitzvah Yibum, but 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 now since each of the men marries one of the widows, they all have a chance of fulfilling this mitzvah. But technically, one guy can marry all five of them, but they all have to do chalitza. Mishnah Dalid. Ha'isha shenis arev vlada bevlad chalasa. A woman who gave birth to a son and her child became mixed up with the child of her daughter-in-law, being her grandson. So does not know which baby is the uncle, but the mother-in-law's son, and which one is the nephew, the daughter-in-law's son. Well, it's not a grandson. It's a nephew and it's an uncle. Okay. In addition, each woman has at least one other son whose identity is certain. Hidilu had taruvas. In the course of time, the mixed up children grew to adulthood. And they married, and then they died without children, so that their widows require yibum or chalitza. However, we don't know which husband was the son of the mother-in-law and which one was the son of the daughter-in-law. So what do? So the answer is any one of the definite sons of the daughter-in-law performs chalitza with the two widows, but may not perform even with them. Shehu safek ishes achiv, because there's an uncertainty about each widow whether she is his brother's wife, who is permitted to him in Yibum, safek ishes achiaviv, or whether she is his father's brother, meaning his uncle's wife, who is ushered to him by the Torah as an erva. Because of this doubt, he may not perform Yibum with either widows, rather, he performs Chalitza with both of them. However, once the daughter in law's sons perform Chalitza with the widows, any one of the definite sons of the older woman, meaning the mother in law, may perform either Chalitza or Yibum with them. Shehu is Safik Ashes Achiv, Ashes Ben Achiv. Because the uncertainty for him is whether she is the wife of his brother or whether she is the wife of his brother's son, both of whom are permitted to him. Continuing with the variation of the previous case, we're going to change it up a little bit. Meisu Hakshavim, if the definite sons married and died childless, and the only brothers they have are the mixed up ones, then the Nei Taruvas, the mixed up sons must do the following. The Nei Hazikna with the widow of the older woman's son, being the widow of the definite uncle. They the mixed up sons must perform chalitza and they do not perform yibum. They're not allowed to do yibum. Because for them the uncertainty is whether the widow is the wife of his brother, who is mutter to him through yibum, achi aviv, or whether she is the wife of his father's brother, who is also to him. Because of this suffix, they may not perform yibum with her, that rather they must perform chalitza. And with the widow of the daughter-in-law's son, I mean the nephew um, of the widow of the definite nephew. Echad Chalitz, echad Yevamos. One of the mixed sons, one of the mixed up sons performs Chalitza, and the other one may then perform Yibum, but she is now in no way usher to him. Whew. Fun stuff. Mishnah Hey, Kohenish in this Arev Vlada Bivlad Shiv Chasa. If the child of a Kohen's wife became mixed up with the child of a slave woman, does not know which boy is the Kohen and which is the slave. The halacha is that each one must be treated as a possible Kohen as well as a possible slave. Therefore, the halachas are as follows. Hare elu ochlim b'truma. They may both eat truma, since both a Kohen and the slave of a Kohen can eat truma. That's not a problem. V'cholkin chelik echa v'gon. But they receive one portion of truma at the threshing floor, where truma is given out. They receive the truma only when they come together, since we do not give truma directly to a Kohen slave in a public setting, unless his master comes along with him. So one's going to be the master, one's going to be a slave, and they have to come together in order to get the truma. The mason, they both may not become tummy through mason, because since one is a Kohen, he's also to become tummy through a mace. They know sinashim, and they both may not get married to any woman. Ben ksheves ben psulos, either to women who are fit to marry a regular Jew, who are also to marry a slave, or to women who are unfit to marry a Jew, the ones who are also to a Kohen, because the one's a Kohen and one's a slave, so the Kohen can't marry a shifcha, and the Eved can't marry a Yisraelis or so you got a big problem over there. That part of a problem. Hegdilu hataruva is that the mixed up children grew to adulthood, and freed each other, so that now the slave, whichever one he has a status of Yisrael. The law is that each one must be treated as a possible Kohen as well as a possible Yisrael. Therefore, the halachas now apply this way. They can both marry women, but only those who are fit for the kahuna. They have to marry any shikashera, because each one's a possible Kohen. They ain't no time the mason, and they still cannot become tummy to mason because for the same reason. Nitma'u ain't on sofkin as harbon. However, if they did become tummy, even purposely, they do not receive malchus, because they can each claim that they're not a Kohen, and we can't punish a person for a questionable violation. They ain't on achlim b'truma, but they cannot eat truma because there's a possible, because a free slave is also to eat truma. But if they did eat truma, they do not have to pay keren chomesh, the value of the truma plus the additional fit of Kohen, since they can claim that they are Kohanim and they don't have to pay. They do not receive a portion of truma at the threshing floor, since they are also to eat it, as we taught above, as we taught in the previous Mishnah. But they may sell to a Kohen the truma that they separate from their own produce, and the money from the sale belongs to them. They do not have to give the money to a Kohen, because they might be Kohan. Because they do not receive a portion of the karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. That says the hides of the karbanos that are given out to the Kohanim who serve in the Beis Hamikdash. Says neither of them can prove that he is a Kohen and entitled to them. We do not give them karbanos to offer in the Beis Hamikdash, because one of them is a non-Kohen and he can't do avodah. But we do not remove their own karbanos, meaning like the bechor, from their possession to give them to a Kohen, since each one can claim that he's a Kohen. They are also pater to give the foreleg, the jaws, and the stomach of kosher animals to a Kohen, since each one can claim that he's a Kohen. And the bechor animal of each should be left to graze until it develops a blemish that disqualifies it from being brought as a korban, and then it can be slaughtered and eaten by the owner. But notice then Allah Chumre Kuhanim v'Chumre Yisrael. The sum of the laws of the Mishnah, we place upon these guys, each of these mixed up sons, both the chumras of the Kohanim and the chumras of the Israelim. Because if you have a Safek Kohen and Safek Israel, you have to take on the chumras of both and cannot rely on the kulas. What a Mishnah. Wow. Mishnah Vav. If a woman did not wait 3 months after becoming divorced, after being divorced or widowed from her husband, the niece is Yalda, and she married someone else right away and then gave birth to a boy 7 months after her second marriage. And Yadua in Ben Tisha, the Rishon, in Ben Shiva, we don't know who the father is. Is the boy, was the boy carried to full term at 9 months by his mother? Or is the child, is he the child of the first husband? Or if he was carried 7 months, and is the child of the later husband? Now, besides this child, she also had other sons from the first husband and other sons from, from the second husband. So the halach is one of the sons of each husband should perform chalitza with her, but they may not take her in Yibum because we do not know to which of them she is an erva. Similarly, he to them, meaning if the known sons of one of the husbands married and died childless, the son whose father is unknown follows the same guidelines. Chalitz, he performs chalitza with their widows, but he may not take the widows in Yibum because any one of them might be ushered to him as an erva. If the son whose father is unknown had brothers from the first husband and brothers from the second husband who were not from that mother, meaning that both husbands have other sons by a different wife, so we don't know which set of sons are his brothers and which are unrelated to him, and these sons married and died childless, then the son whose father is unknown may perform either chalitza or even with any of the widows, since they are all mutter to him. But if he married and died childless, then the law of for them, meaning the sons of the first and second husband, is as follows: one of them, the son of one of the husbands, performs chalitza with the widow, and then the other one, the son of the other husband, may take her. Sorry, the son of the husband, the son of one of the husbands performs chalitza with the widow, and then the other one could do yibum with her. Okay. I'm not sure I'm saying everything correctly over here because there's no tongue twist. And the last Mishnah, which is like a long one, Mishnah Zion, let's see. Echad Yisrael Echad Kohen. If one of the husbands of the woman who did not wait 3 months before remarrying goes to Yisrael, and the other one was a Kohen, so it's not known that the child in turn is Yisrael or a Kohen. So you got to treat him as a possible Yisrael or possible Kohen, similar to what we said beforehand. So following halachos apply. Notice Isha Maria Kohen. He, the son, may marry only a woman who is fit for a Kohen, because he might be a Kohen. There ain't no time in Mason. He can't become time in Mason. And if he does become time, he does not receive Malchus, because he's possibly not a Kohen, as we discussed earlier in the Perek. Now, regarding Truma, he can't eat Truma because he might not be a Kohen. If he does eat Truma mistakenly, he does not have to pay the principal or the Chomesh because it's possible that he might be a Kohen. He does not receive a portion of the Truma at the threshing floor because he is us to eat Truma but he may sell the Kohen the truma that he separates from his own produce, and the money from the sale is his to keep, even though he may not eat truma, he may benefit from selling it because he might be a Kohen. He does not receive a portion of the korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash, in those that are not eaten, such as the hides, as we discussed beforehand. We do not give him korbanos to offer in the Mikdash for the same reason. We do not remove his own korbanos from his possession. And he is parted from the chiyuv to give the foreleg, the jaws, and the stomach of kosher animals that he slaughters as a gift to a Kohen, because he might be a Kohen. And his Bechor animal is not to give it to a Kohen, rather it should be left to graze until it develops a disqualifying blemish, and he may then slaughter it and eat it. And notice they love Chumei Kohanim and Chumei Israelim, and as we said before in earlier Mishnayos in this Perek, we place upon he has to hold the chumras of the Kohanim and the chumras of the Israelim. Okay, so now you have a similar case, but now if both of the but now it's if both of the fathers are Kohanim. So Hayishnei and Kohanim, if both husbands were Kohanim, so the child is definitely a Kohen. However, we do not know who his father is. Then the following laws apply. Who owning Aleya? If either husband dies, then the son becomes an owning for them, and he may not perform the avoda or eat from the meat of a korban on the day of their deaths, since either one might have been his father. Ve'hein onanim alav. And similarly, if the son dies, then both of the husbands they become an owning for him, and they cannot do avoda or eat from korbanos on the day of his death, since he might have been their son. Who ain't a time of the hem? The son may not make himself tummy through contact with the husbands if either of them died, because a Kohen cannot be matame through a mace to anyone who's not a close relative, and he does not know if the dead person is really his father. And the fathers, the husbands, they cannot be matame to him because they don't know if the dead person is really his son. Who ain't a Yorish's son? The son does not inherit either husband if one of them dies, because the other sons of each husband can claim that he's not the brother and is therefore not an heir. But the husbands do inherit the son if he dies without children, and they split the inheritance between themselves. He is pater from the death penalty for hitting or cursing either this one, being the first husband, or that one, or the second husband, since it's unknown which one is really his father, and the person cannot be punished by the courts when it's not certain that he is guilty. And this son goes up to the Beis Hamikdash to perform the avoda with the mishmar of both of the husbands when it's their turn to serve, and the other Kohanim of the mishmar cannot prevent them from performing the service. Because he might be from mishmar A or might be from mishmar B, and therefore he can go to both of them. But he does not receive a portion of the meat or the hides or the korbanos that are divided among the members of each mishmar. However, if both of the husbands belong to the same mishmar, then he does take the portion with the other members of the mishmar when it's their turn to serve in the mikdash, since no matter who his father is, he definitely belongs to that mishmar, and therefore he can get his chelik. Okay, that's all for today. We will see you tomorrow for Perek Yibum. Mr. Shem is going to be finishing the Masechta on Tuesday and starting Kesuvos on Erev Pesach. I'm thinking that on Erev Pesach itself, as a kapara to we missed out on Erev Sukkot. I wanted to do the shiur at 7 a.m. on Erev Pesach, before Shachris at 8. But we'll discuss that as we get closer. Have a wonderful day. Kol Tov.
Have a good day.